our next speaker, because he's going to lead us through the journey of innovation, acceleration, and transformation. And I'm talking about Cody Nath here, who is the president and CEO of Refined Technologies. He serves refining and petrochemical clients with patented chemical cleaning and consulting services. RTI is a private-only organization with the mission statement of honor God always, help people develop, pursue excellence, earn a profit. One of the best purpose-driven organizations that I have had the privilege of meeting throughout my career, and one of the great enduring leaders who is with us today. Thank you so much, Cody, for sharing your wisdom and expertise with our global audience today.
Thank you so much, Jose. It's a real honor and a privilege to be able to present and have this conversation with you all today. I've learned so much from Jose, and as you'll see as we go through this conversation, what an intro. I agree with everything Jose said. It's an exciting time to be a leader, but it's a challenging time to be a leader. I hope that, you know, in the half-hour discussion that I can bring to you today, as we're considering what to present, I hope I can provide encouragement as a leader. You're signed up to be a leader, which means you've signed up to take on challenges, and I hope I can be an encouragement that things are possible and that you can achieve great things through accelerating innovation. And I hope to also make it a really practical conversation. What I'm trying to be as authentic as possible to share the things that we've learned on our journey. We're absolutely on this journey with each of you towards trying to create, you know, additional value for our customers, for our clients, for inside of our organization, and just to really help our employees, which we call artisans at RTI, to thrive and to flourish. And so that's the goal, is that you come away encouraged and also with some practical takeaways. And I look forward to Q&A at the end of this conversation with you. But accelerating innovation is the topic. How do we do that? What do we do? And I'm gonna just to do that, I think there's some important things. Jose mentioned a little bit in the intro about who we are, but as we go through this, I'm not seeing that go. Sorry for this 1 second, folks. There we go. Oh, there we go. Okay. It's important. Sorry for the stop there. It's important that I think you have a little bit of an understanding about who we are and where we operate. Jose said we are a service business. We provide chemical cleaning, shutdown, turnaround, maintenance services for the refining and petrochemical industries. You can see where we're located. We've got our start in North America. We have an office in Singapore. We have operations in Western Europe as well. And I think that's an important part, just as we talk about, I appreciate that different types of organizations have different challenges, and I think it's important for you all to understand where we're coming from. But we really are an operations-based organization. We have probably close to 4,000 years of process operations experience, folks who have worked for major operations companies and now lead our services team. Equally important to the what we do is the why we do it, probably more important. And as Jose said in the beginning, eternal purpose fuels excellence. We're talking about innovation and accelerating innovation today, but our why statement, our Simon Sinek why statement, is that eternal purpose fuels excellence. And it's what motivates us. It's what motivates us to do a great job for our clients every day. Jose mentioned our mission statement and core behaviors. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on culture today, but I would say culture is the foundation of everything that we're talking about. If the culture of your organization is struggling, if you have things like, I'd measure that by high turnover or low engagement or just kind of dissatisfaction or low, you can maybe measure this in a net promoter score, low net promoter score. I think it's gonna be really difficult to talk about things like accelerating innovation. We're coming out of a time of, as Jose mentioned, a global pandemic. Look, this was hard. There was hard stuff. It was a hard time to be a leader. It was a hard time to do anything. It's a hard time to have a family and work from home and kids at home and school out and all of these things that were challenging. It was difficult. It's hard to think about growth and acceleration and innovation in times like that. Yeah, but yes, we have to. These are things that we have to do. And so time spent on culture is a really important element of it. And I would say that we have a unique culture at RTI. We recruit and we retain and we develop and train people. It's part of our DNA. It's part of our mission statement. And I think that if we have a reason why we've been successful at accelerating innovation, sure, it's going to come into some of the practical things that we're going to talk about here. But I also think that we've spent a lot of time over 20 to 20-year history of the business investing in the culture and investing in our people. A lot of times people say, you know, and I've heard it said many times that people are our greatest asset, but we don't treat people like that. One, they're not really assets; they're people. Let's treat them well. Let's have high expectations, but then let's develop them. Let's invest in them. And I think that that is the beginning of what we can talk about around acceleration and innovation. I'm not going to go into HR policies and practices and kind of corporate giving and things like that. But I think that that's a different conversation for a different day. But I do think that those are really important elements, and so that's why I started with this before we jump into the acceleration of innovation. So, but how does this look at RTI? How do we accelerate innovation at RTI? What do we do? How do we do it? And I'd say that there are really three key parts to this for us. It's going to be a shared vocabulary, organizational ownership, and a stage gate process. So these are the three things that we're going to spend the most time going into today. We're going to cover this with examples. We're going to cover this with some case studies, and then we're going to get to some lessons learned at the end, some real practical takeaways related to these three topics. What is the ultimate goal? What is the ultimate goal of these things? We can do a lot. We can create a lot of activity. We can do a lot of different things, but the ultimate goal is value creation. My dad always told me growing up when I was mowing the lawn, I'd work really hard to mow the lawn. I'd be busy for a long time, and I'd say, Dad, I work really hard mowing the lawn. And he'd always tell me the same thing. He said, son, don't confuse activity and achievement. He's like, you were really busy doing a lot of stuff. At the end of the day, the lawn looks pretty terrible. You know, he's like, your goal is the end. The end is value creation. We can do a bunch of stuff. We can have lots of programs. We can create lots of funnels. We can have lots of meetings. But at the end of the day, shooting towards value creation. What do we mean by value creation? We can get into that a little bit. I think most of you probably understand that, but I think it's easy to lose focus of the goal of innovation. And value creation for our customers, value creation for the business, value creation for our communities. If we're not actually able to measure the value creation, are we just? I'll just leave you with a rhetorical question here. Are we actually achieving anything? Or are we just generating a lot of activity? We're busier than ever, but are we actually accomplishing? Are we actually achieving? So that's the goal: is value creation. So let's go through this. How we got started. Look at this guy, Jose Perez. He was in our introduction here. I think the first part that we had to come up with as an organization was really a shared vocabulary. And the cue kind of went off the top there, but the shared vocabulary, the language that we're using around our organization was really important. We started by having our leadership team get off and do it. If you think about words like value creation, innovation, excellence, what do these things mean? They can mean very different things to different people. And if we're not consistent about what we mean, we can find that these activities that we're generating, these ideas that we're generating, could lead to very different outcomes. We could be prioritizing things differently. And so the shared vocabulary around things like stage gates and organizational ownership of roles was a really important process. We met with Jose at an offsite, just our top 35 leaders in the organization. We have a team of about 300. So just as a reference, about top 10% leaders in the company. And we spent 2 full days going through these concepts. About 6 months, we started to go to work on these, and about 6 months later, we brought Jose to our offsite, and that's what this picture is, where we had our entire organization. Every single person in our organization went through this content, where we would go through the language of building a culture of excellence and innovation. We had keynotes followed by workshops. This was coming right out of COVID. A lot of people on our team, I mean, rightfully so, said, hey, why are we working on this? We're just trying to survive. This is the essentials for survival. You can either die or you can grow, and that's certainly. But part of that comes down to the language you're using in the shared vocabulary. Let me give you an example of what I mean by this. Lean thinking is one. What is lean thinking? Lean thinking can have a pretty negative connotation. I'm not a Six Sigma black belt. I have a deep appreciation for Kaizens and a deep appreciation for the value and the value creation in thinking, but I'm not personally an expert. But certainly our frontline people, and have been a part of lots of organizations, you should know that your culture is also an accumulation of all the other cultures where everybody has been before. And lean thinking usually meant, hey, I'm about to lose my job, or hey, we're going to do headcount, or hey, you're expecting me to work harder. I'm already working hard. I'm already working as hard as I can, and you're about to expect me to do more. And we had to say, no, time out. When we say lean thinking, what we actually mean is elimination of waste. And like everybody's heard that let's work harder, let's work smarter, not harder. Usually that just means let's work harder, but it's usually not what it means. But I really do think that we had to stop and say, hey, look at all these processes that we've built over 20 years. What are actually adding value? Where are we not adding value? Time out. Let's go slow so that we can go fast. Let's really dig in and understand this. And I think that it takes time. It takes time to build the trust in that. But the lean thinking that came out of that, I think is changed the meaning of that word inside of our organization. I'm not saying that there's not still some baggage around that, but I think that but it's gotten better. Another word I'd say that we had to get our hands around was change management. What does that mean? Coming out of operating environments and plants, a lot of times change management means lots of paperwork. It doesn't mean value creation. But when we think about change, I mean, all of this innovation, it results in change of some kind. It's going to happen. And so how do we change well? What we've started to say to our organization is that we need to increase our capability for change. We need to become able to change more quickly. And so how do we do that? We bring engagement up earlier. We understand some different things that I'll go through the rest of the time. But again, this word, lean thinking, our leads words, lean thinking, change management, they have a lot of connotation. They have a lot of baggage. Let's make sure that the shared vocabulary when we're using those words is understood all the way from the leadership in the organization to the front lines of the organization and everything in between. So that was the first step in the process. The second step is really this organizational ownership. Who is going to own the different pieces of this process? This is our initiative one pager. You guys, we won't have time to go through all of this in detail, but we had to first define what an initiative was. Like we're gonna do these initiatives, we're gonna start these things. What's an initiative? I mean, again, multiple definitions for multiple people. I'll kind of read you our version of it. It's a focused project requiring dedicated resources. Those words matter. We need to dedicate people to this project. Multiple people and functions. So we have some dedicated resources up on this part of the box. These are abbreviations for different roles inside of our organization. These are the people that it's going to affect departments. It has a defined scope and objectives. Here's the piece, the why and the now, with these defined scopes and objectives, the OKRs being on the bottom. And a start and stop date. When are we going to start? When are we going to stop? And then how are we going to measure the improved effectiveness or the deliverable? Again, how do we measure the value creation? There's nothing magical about this initiative one pager. It's what we designed for us. This is a generic one. I'll show you. We're going to go through two examples of where it's real, but where we applied it. But these are the steps we had to define. We had to define the owners of these. We had to define the owners of these steps. And so again, nothing magical about these titles except that we had to define them for our organization. A sponsor, who's the executive member that's going to own this and make sure that the resources are dedicated to it. Primary role for a sponsor is making sure that we have the proper resource allocation. It's great if I said, hey, Joe, you're going to be responsible for this project. And if I give Joe 15 other assignments and he's not able to focus on that, you can be sure that that activity or that initiative is not going to be successful. And that's not Joe's fault. That's the sponsor's fault. And so we had to define the sponsor's role. The team lead, but in this case, it would have been Joe. Who's going to be responsible for day-to-day advancing of this? And then the owner of this is the power user of the initiative. Who's going to own it? And a lot of times owning it past the actual initiative. So who's going to be the ongoing owner after this? And the stage gate process and steering team, who's looking at it across the portfolio of investments. Our stage gate initiative process is a portfolio of things. Rarely in any organization, I mean, maybe this is true for some, you have one initiative. We have a program of initiatives that are going on at different times, and we need to make sure that we're dedicating resources and allocating these and looking at it from a corporate level across all the things that we have. So coaching expertise, communication, economics emphasis, team leads, that's all part of those. And so we had to define these roles and define these processes. I think skipping this step would be a big mistake. Your company, your organization may have different names for these roles, but I think that each of these roles is an important part of actually accelerating the innovation. You kind of have to go slower to go fast. Define these roles and define the responsibility for them. If you go on down, after that, we go into what we call the stage gate process. And so this should look familiar. I mean, again, I'll come back to this point again. Nothing magical about the names, but hey, you kind of move across the top of this. You have an idea, a business case, you design and develop it, you pilot it, you implement it and scale, and you complete and integrate. defining what we found is initiatives can kind of just be amorphous. They can kind of go across all of these things unless we're specific. So we found that we needed to have a discipline. There's a discipline to this where we're starting with an idea, we're moving it to a business case, where we then go and say, okay, we're going to design and develop. Before we do any piloting, we have to design and develop. What is the MVP? How long is this going to take? We're going to test and then we're going to pilot it. And then we're going to implement and scale and complete and integrate. Each of these has a defined stage gate process. They don't move from one to another just on their own. They move through the stage gate program that we talked about earlier with key deliverables and with key funding that goes in each of these steps. It's one of the things we'll talk about in the lessons learned, that each of these things requires a funding step. Sometimes these fundings can be, thousands of dollars. Sometimes they could be up to, in our case, up to millions of dollars. But you don't move to the next one without a review and a discussion about it. Again, that kind of seems like, man, I think we just go blow through all these. Part of me was like, let's just blow through this. This seems like a lot of process. We should just be able to go, if we have an idea, let's just go and implement it. Well, some ideas that does work. They don't affect a lot of people. They have this, if you look at the output of the idea, it's just a just do it thing. Hey, that's better, just do it. A lot of times though, we feel like these just do it things are like, let's just do it, it's just easy, without actually understanding how many other people in the organization it affects. As your organization grows in complexity, these ideas can affect a lot of things. Hey, we probably started with more just do it's, and we found that those just do it activities didn't really get to complete and integrate because they really weren't that. They really were an initiative that needed a business case. They needed some change management. They needed a pilot to actually work out some kinks. The individual wanting to just do it didn't have the full picture. And so what we actually found is, rather than trying to do more of just do it, we actually think we want to do more, treat it more as an initiative, with actual change management process that goes through the whole thing. We will be able to accomplish more, better, faster, more value creation by actually working a process than rather going straight to a implement and integrate step. And so that's a discipline that we found, and a stage gate process that was absolutely critical, and it remains critical for us to be able to accomplish more. Okay, so again, we had an overall process that had an overall process owner, a dedicated resource to that, and then we had an overall coach for the process as well, that's separate, that actually works with each of the individuals that's running through their ideas all the way through complete and integrate. So okay, back to this kind of, what does it look like? We have a new idea and a key initiative portfolio. You guys have seen matrices like these. I'm sure you use matrices like these. We have just kind of an X and a Y on the amount of value creation and then the likelihood of success. And some of these are just do it. Some of these are more on track, constrained, blocked, and active. There's a different code for all of these. Every 3 weeks, and I think this is an important part of the discipline, every 3 weeks, our stage gate initiative team is getting together, reviewing this one and the next slide I'm going to show you, to say, where are these ideas? Are there new ideas? The new ideas being the ones that look like light bulbs in this case. Where the new ideas fall, how do they rank with the other processes, and then how are they changing? We'll go through the next one when we go through the how are they changing part. Are they moving along? Are they moving along the process? Really, really important to get this step right. Let's actually evaluate where the opportunities are. I'll attribute the quote to Peter Drucker, because he seems to say everything. I think it's a safe bet that if you're using a business quote, it's probably Peter Drucker. But he said most businesses don't starve, they drown. And I think that that's true. There's a lot of ideas. We have not found that idea generation is the challenge. We've found that actually prioritizing the right ideas and then moving them through in a disciplined fashion through the stage gate is more of the option. And so it's important that we come to this slide to say, hey, are we actually working on the things that have the highest value creation and the highest chance of success? So to read off this slide, if we're not working on 7, 8, and E, the highest likelihood of success and the highest impact, and instead we're focused on F2 in the left with the lowest likelihood of success and lower profitability, that would be a mistake. But how often do we do that? I mean, regularly, because there might be a lot of passion about those, but we haven't justified them as the ones that have the best readiness with the highest impact. And so this prioritization step is really important. And this is not something that sits on a shelf that we don't look at. We look at once a year. We look at this every 3 weeks as a team and say, where are we at? How are we working? And are we working on the right things? As much as like, are you moving things along the things? You could be successful, but you could be successful with the wrong initiatives. this is the step that says, are we working on the right initiatives? It's a really important part of the stage gate process. The next part is then how does it move along, like I mentioned. So the last one really showed where they map in terms of the value. So now we've decided what to do, and now we're going to track how we're actually doing it. And this again falls into this same stage gate meeting that we meet with every 3 weeks. Again, we have some in the idea, we have some in the business case, we have some in the design, develop, pilot, implement, scale, and integrating. So a lot in this section for us right now. This is from our meeting just a couple weeks ago. So this is the live slide. I've just kind of scrubbed some detail just for confusion. I've left 2 on there. You'll see there's AR/MR, we call it Armor, and then there's another one called iView. Those are the 2 that I'm going to kind of talk a little bit more in detail about here in a second. But we tend to have a lot in the pilot and the implement side, and then a few in the integrating. This is kind of how it's looked for us. We started this process about 24 months ago. And so, yeah, we had a lot, you know, if you looked over time, we were at a lot more in the idea, business case, design, develop, and these things have moved along from left to right along our process. We're probably at about the most we can do as an organization right now in the pilot and implement scale. This is about those 2 phases. This is about the max that we as the size of our organization can do. So what happens if we find that something is, if something is more important than these on the last slide? Hey, we have a new opportunity. It's a top right quadrant. What we may choose to do is we may choose to pause one of those. That's an option. We can meet every 3 weeks. We make these decisions. It doesn't mean we're canceling. It doesn't mean we're killing it. We may pause it if we see an opportunity. We have to understand though that pausing it what the ramifications of that are, and if it's really going to be a pause or it really does kill it, because momentum is a real thing. And so it forces priority discussions. The answer as a leader cannot always be let's just do it as well. I mean, that's probably been one of my personal hardest lessons is, yeah, let's just do it. We can do it. We can do it. Well, they're saying yes to something and saying no to something else. Again, you've heard that phrase. It's just this is the meeting where you really have to practice what you're preaching on, things like that. So we probably more than this slide represents, we actually have more in the idea and in the business case. What we found is that those things really happen more independently. We spend more time on our every 3 weeks meeting really going over the section in the light blue there, the design, develop, pilot, implement, scale. Those are the places where we spend most of our time. And so that's probably the part that most represents where our organization is today. Okay, let's talk a little bit about some examples here. All right, so this is a lot of theory on how we're doing this. I want to show you kind of how we do this. So I'm going to go back to this slide again. Again, we're going to talk about these 2 right here. We're going to start with iView, and then we're going to go to Armor. I know that we have a lot of people that are on this program that are leading digital transformations, and so these are just 2 of the projects I just happen to take to show that actually do have a little bit of a digital element to them. Most of our initiatives have something that relates to technology. We're a technology company, even though we're in the cleaning and the industrial services space. I'm not a digital technology. I don't have an expertise in that. I certainly have tried to learn a lot because I think it's a really important element to our business. But so I'm going to present this at a very high level and a pretty non-technical level. I'm glad to answer questions in the follow-up if you would like to get more technical. But iView really is our program for field-enabled worker. Many organizations are going through this, saying, hey, how do we bring digital tools into the field? Our plans used to be all just written out on a piece of paper. We had clipboards out in the field. They were really detailed. We were down to like P&ID level detail of our drawings, but it was still a very manual process and it was very paper-driven. iView, we actually probably had an in-between step where we started using Microsoft OneNote and just using tablets in the field, using iPads or Android tablets in the field. But iView really was our connected worker, our field-enabled worker program. You can see we have sponsorship, owners, team leads. These are assigned. And this is actually, I would say, pretty representative of what it looks like. These are all the different people in our organization, the roles in our organization that are affected by this program. Most of our team. And this top section is all operations. Most of our initiatives affect operations. A lot of the bottleneck to going through our process, rightly so, is operations. Most of our technology affects them. And most of that is because that's where a lot of the value creation can be driven. So again, this is every 3 weeks, there'll be an update on this one-page document. This one's a little bit older from an April 1st date. but we have our OKRs, we have project issues, accomplished this period. We have some next accomplishments and leadership's report requested. So these are really important elements that we expect to be updated every single time. Let me give you a little bit of a look at what this is. So I kind of went through that. You know, color coding, yellow, green. I mean, those are standard. We have red. These are. I didn't show you a red one today. And then how do we measure our objectives? We use OKRs, objectives, key results. You could use any of them. I don't think there's magic in the OKR method. It's a useful method that we've chosen to adopt and stick with. I think importantly, stick with, don't keep changing the method over time. So what does this look like? So for us, these screenshots may not be that impressive to you. That's okay. I think that's actually good news. But it's a Google App Sheets driven application that we built for our internal systems. Our clients can access this as well. I've kind of got some screenshots of the Loom video here. But you can see that this takes different elements of our program. These are different systems and overviews. We have dashboarding that's available. Our clients can then track along with this. Every single thing, we basically, one of the advantages of this is we treat each point in each part of our plan, each valve, each drain, each system as an asset that then can be tracked across all of our documentation from one place. So the efficiency from a planning perspective is we don't have to update 10 different documents relative to that change. We can update one. The other thing is it's always live. So we always are able to access the latest version, and our clients are able to see real time the status of the systems that we're putting through. I'm going to go to the next one here in the interest of time. ARMOR. It stands for Augmented Reality Mechanical Rental. When we come out to execute projects in the field, a lot of times we're setting up temporary facilities. And so how do we do this? I mean, again, it was paper copies of plot plans that were sketched out and then labeled down. I mean, it was useful, we could do it, but it was really hard for our clients and certainly the mechanical contractors to try and take a 2D document with very specific mechanical things that we needed and understand what that would look like visually in the field, moving around things. I should have said in the last one, the iView is at the implement and scale where we've rolled that out to our entire operations team. This ARMOR we piloted. I'm going to go right to screenshots here, just in the interest of time, of what this looks like. Actually, if you want, I'll pause for a second. You can click this. You can click the QR code, and you can save that. Come back to that and watch that. That's actually kind of a fly through on our ARMOR program. But what this looks like is a digital planning tool. And so with this augmented reality tool, this is just a screenshot. You can see on the video that you can actually fly through this. It actually gives the detail. What we found, and this is a great example of accelerating information, we tried to do this at first by doing 3D laser scans of these process units and refineries. We had we actually used some third parties with backpacks that had the cameras on them. You've probably been familiar with it. They were walking the units down, they were taking these, and then they were scanning those in. What we found was the resolution was amazing, but the file size was really big. They were really hard to manipulate. It took a long time to get them, and the price point was pretty high. I mean, we got the price point down on the unit probably to maybe 20% of what it historically cost by trying to cut out some things and be more efficient. But what we found with the augmented reality is we could have one of our mechanical coordinators in one day with an iPad take this and get the level of detail that we needed to be able to plan and execute this work from a field perspective, and then allow our clients to walk down. So it was a less detailed solution. The solution is less elegant than a full 3D rendering of a unit, but it met the process need. And if we go back to the value creation, it captured all of the value. The value was not in a beautiful 3D scan. The value is in, hey, do we know where we're going to place these temporary facilities and the accuracy of those 3D facilities? That was the goal, and so that led us to this solution. And so you can go on and off with the background here. These are the pump alley of this specific project, and then you can zoom in. You can see that we have exactly what the setup is, exactly what the three-dimensional layout is, and you can zoom in even more detail than that. So again, just an example of maybe the most elegant solution was not the best choice. It was the simplest solution that provided the most value, that enabled our existing team to be able to do this more efficiently. This has been a big win for us. So we've moved past pilot. We're rolling this out to all of our teams now into the implement and scale phase, and then I'm sure we'll have challenges that we'll meet when we come into this part of it. Many of which are being discussed as a part of this program. But I do think it's going to provide a lot of value. So what are some of the outcomes? Okay, let's get to value creation. The value creation for our customers has been immense. I'm not going to actually show stats on that. I can just show you kind of what it's been for us. So in the last 18 months, we've been able to really start 6 new business lines, 4 digital initiatives, and 8 new products, which over the last 2 years now account for about a quarter of our 2022 revenue. So the impacts of this are significant. It's hard to argue with any of those things. What would we have been able to do without a focused and disciplined process around accelerating innovation? Something. I mean, for sure, we would have. I mean, it wasn't zero before this, but maybe, again, hypothetical, but I would say less than half of those results would have been achieved, and certainly through a lot more anxiety and angst across our organization to accomplish that. All right, so what are some of the lessons learned? I'm going to go through each of these just briefly by, hopefully these are useful for you. And some of these you might be like, man, I can't believe you had to learn these lessons. Maybe you should have known these when you started. Probably so, but these are the ones we've learned. Around the shared vocabulary, I think that we talked about this one already, shifting the mindset on lean. If you're going to use words like lean or change management that have specific technical meanings, be sure that you're explaining those to your organization and assume that there are going to be some people that might have some baggage around those terms from a prior engagement. So we may think we are intending to communicate one thing and it comes across very differently. I think I've been surprised at how my communications don't land, even because of the vocabulary that I'm using, having different meanings to different people. So I think that's an important one. Value creation, I should say NPV. We really use net present value to create a consistent value creation metric across all of our business. Investing in financial literacy across the organization. Many of our people come from refining backgrounds or from operations backgrounds. They may have never had to actually calculate value creation before. So we've spent time going through the technical work of creating understanding what that means. To do that, we've had to expand our financial disclosure internally. If you're expecting people to be able to create value or to improve performance relative to a target, they need to have access to those targets. Are those targets easily available to them? Can they do the math on this? Can they calculate the value creation in real time? I mean, those are important things that we've had to upgrade our systems and our tools, our business, like our business intelligence tools to be able to allow for that. And then share that vocabulary broadly. Don't create management speak separately from your rest of your organization. We need everybody speaking the same language. Many to most of the value creation will come at the front lines. And if you have not considered that consistently all the way down, you're going to struggle. And so that was something we had to do. I said at the beginning on org ownership that our sponsors were an executive level sponsor. That's how we started, and we quickly realized that was not ideal. We pushed sponsorship further down into the organization. Another Peter Drucker quote that's been one for me: the bottleneck is always at the top of the bottle. If there is a problem, if there's a bottleneck in the organization, you can always assume it's in the top. The bottleneck is never at the middle of the bottle or the bottom of the bottle. We like to blame the bottom of the bottle. It's always us. It's always leaders at the top of the bottle, and a lot of it's because we're not pushing it further down in the organization. It's also that we're still too optimistic. We can be bad at terminating and celebrating ideas. Hey, we tried this. It didn't work. That's great. We learned. We need to be better at that. I mentioned the starving versus drowning earlier. The other one we got to do is you got to keep the rhythm of the meetings. We've had different times saying, hey, this 3 weeks feels too soon. Like we don't even have an update from 3 weeks ago. Well, then are we really prioritizing it? If these are we're saying these are our organizational priorities, and we haven't moved and progressed in the last 3 weeks, are we really prioritizing these things? And so maybe we don't have a big update for every single one of our initiatives every 3 weeks, but across a portfolio of initiatives, we absolutely need to keep the rhythm of the meetings. And so what you prioritize is going to be what gets what happens. And if you're not prioritizing stage gate processes as a leader, you can be certain that those things are not going to get prioritized on down through the organization. So that's an important part. Lastly here is on the stage gate process itself. We had to really change from like, hey, we're going to have Joe and he's going to move into this permanent role or he's going to work on this initiative. No, temporary assignments. These are temporary assignments. They're not permanent roles. They're 3, 6, 12-month engagements with key objectives and key value creation metrics That language was new to us. We only, I mean, historically, we had just put people in roles, and that those roles were indefinite. No, they're treated more like a venture. We're funding in tranches. The budget's zero. We need to say, hey, are we seeing the value creation? If not, let's come back to the last one. Let's terminate that idea and celebrate that idea. It doesn't mean, and then let's reassign Joe to the next idea, the better idea, the next idea along the pipeline. Involving the right people at the business stage case is important. One thing we made a mistake on the change management was certainly, hey, let's really get operations engaged when we're ready to roll out. No, way too late. Change management begins at the idea stage of that process, not at the implement or the scale. If you're trying to do change management and engagement at the far right section of that, you're too late. They haven't had any buy-in in that process. So pushing engagement as early as you can in the process, that's been much more successful for us in speeding things through and accelerating the innovation. The last one I'll say, this certainly applies mostly to the digital, but really to everything. If you build it, you must maintain it. I don't know if Peter Drucker said that one. I don't know who said that one, but it's certainly been a mantra that we've said around here. Hey, we have a cost of these projects to build these projects, to start these projects, but then there is going to be an ongoing cost to maintain these projects, and we need to factor that in, just in terms of the resources, the people, but also the cost of things. So hopefully those are useful lessons. We could probably spend a lot of time on each of those, and those are a fraction of the lessons we're learning. We're learning as we go, and hopefully we continue to get better at this. But I'm grateful for the opportunity to present. I hope that this was encouraging to you that it can be done, certainly, and that it can be done, and that those are some useful takeaways that can help you on your journey as we all share and we all grow together to learn how to accelerate innovation more effectively. So thank you very much for your time, and Jose, I'll come back to you here.
Cody, what a fascinating review and insights you have shared with us. Thank you so much for that. Lots of great comments and questions in here. You got a lot of response on most businesses don't starve, they drown. A lot of people say, I am drowning. I found the right expression for what I'm going through. Lots of interesting questions. And if I can summarize the main themes here, one of them is around even you came across a very disciplined approach to innovation. This is not, let's put some ping pong tables around and have free food in the cafeteria and lots of ideas everywhere. I mean, you seem to have a very disciplined approach to this whole thing. How end to end? Is that it's something that's evolving, something that you have been doing for a while? How have you developed this discipline over time?
Yeah. Well, I will say, Jose, I do like to eat. So if there was food around, I feel like my innovation does get better when there's food involved. So I think that I didn't mention that, but that's certainly a lesson learned. Better food, better ideas. So at least more attendance. That's an important part. Attendance is good. I do think that discipline matters, and process matters. I mean, if I'm gonna be honest, I'm certainly wired more as an entrepreneur that likes to start things, likes to grow things, and I haven't always valued process as much as I should. Process to me was stuff that slowed things down and was bureaucratic and was and just didn't add value. And I think that can be very true. The wrong kinds of process can be, and the way I would define it is, are those processes and are those disciplines back to leading towards value creation? What is the goal of the process? If the goal of the process is to drive additional value creation, I think they're essential. And so I think that yes, our processes evolve over time, and I think we have to continually say, is this process serving us? Are we serving this process? And continue to refine it. That's the idea of lean. I mean, that's the idea of Kaizen, is like, hey, what can we eliminate? What is wasteful? But then what adds and what drives value? And so, yes, it is a disciplined form of innovation. I think the lone guy out there coming up with an idea that changes the world, that radically scales, is certainly attractive and makes for a good story. That just hasn't been our experience here. We're much more of a process-driven form of innovation. And I think the more complex the organization is, the more true that has to be, because it affects so many different people in the organization.
So. That's well said. And this is a very our main audience here. If I look at the participants in this conference, they have backgrounds in business excellence and innovation and transformation, very qualified, and they catch on to something that you presented throughout, which is clear ownership. Something that, based on the comments here, a lot of organizations struggle with, because lots of people have ideas, lots of people like to point fingers, but nobody likes to own anything, and accountability is hard. And so how the question is, how do you set this ownership? How do you make people accountable for what, the results of these initiatives? How does that work for you?
Well, I think it's I think it starts with finding the right people. I mean, I do think that there are certain people that are going to have more of a disposition towards wanting to own and wanting to do stuff. And so when we're interviewing people, we're certainly looking for those traits of what have they owned in the past. I mean, like, past performance can be a pretty good indication of future performance. So like that is a piece of it. But even then, I mean, like, even after that, I would say, like, that's the role of the leader. I mean, so like, I don't think people want to not have responsibility or don't want to grow. I tend to view things with a growth mindset. I think people want to contribute and people want to own. But as a leader, we sometimes say, like, they have a lack of ownership. But, like, is that true, or do we just give them so many priorities that they can't own anything? We say there's a lack of ownership, but we've been really clear on what good looks like, or how to get the resources they need. I'll go back to that quote. I think the bottleneck's always at the top. I don't think the bottleneck is really ever those individuals. And so when we feel stuck, or hey, that individual is not picking up that and running with it, well, that might be true. We might have to have a performance conversation or an expectation alignment. But more often than that, I find that we haven't set up the business with the resources relative to the project to be able to achieve that. So that's not always true, but like that, in my experience, a lot of times we like to blame individuals for lack of ownership. And what I've seen more often is it's a lack of our ownership as leaders to say, hey, Joe, this is your priority. I'm going to clear all the hurdles away for you to work on this, and I'm expecting big and great things, and I'm here to support you. I find, like, when I do that, or when we do that as leaders, we can really achieve a lot. I also recognize there's probably people on this call that can't necessarily do that. They're leading through a place of more influence than they are authority, and I think that's harder. But I'd still say, I still think I know that in your career you've done this well many different times, through discipline process, and then through just mentoring and encouraging, and sharing what's possible. I think that those things can be done. I mean, it's hard. It's hard. This is leadership. This is messy. This is hard. It's not. There's no. I hope I didn't present a formula that if you just follow this, it's easy and automatic. That's certainly not been our experience. It's hard.
Those are great insights, Cody. This is a good segue also for a common question that came up while you were presenting, which is like, well, I wish this guy was the CEO of my company, because you provide a very logical, systematic approach on how to get things done. And but common sense is the least common of the sense in large organizations, and especially in very large organizations, leaders sometimes really hard to reach them, and a lot of the practitioners here are trying to influence the CEOs and the C-level in their organizations. Do you have any tips on how they can become better at influencing C-level leaders like yourself? I mean, what do you think would be a good communication strategy or approach for accelerating innovation? How do you talk to people, to leaders in their organizations in a way that they get a little bit more traction?
Yeah, I mean, I think leadership's a hard job. So I'm glad you think I'm a good leader. You met me for 30 minutes, so I got plenty of problems. So don't talk to anybody on my team. It's good. I think that here's what I'd say that it's useful for me. And every leader is going to be different in how you approach him or her to get their attention. But I think it comes back to this value creation. I mean, like, and probably incentives. So go back to what is driving and what the language of the leader, hopefully the leader in your organization has articulated a vision that he or she is trying to accomplish, or a direction they want to see the organization go. And to the extent that your ideas can align or can assist or propel that vision, I think just be clear. Here's what I would say is hard for me. If I get a 40-page PowerPoint that just says thoughts, and an email attachment, that's going to be hard. Leaders are busy. Everybody's busy. Am I going to really dig through that and give you my thoughts? Probably not. I mean, it's hard. Even as much as I might want to, I'm not going to get to that. And I'm saying most leaders are like that. Be precise, be consistent, be able to be clear. You back to ownership. Clearly own your idea. Be willing to champion and fight for it. But be clear on the value creation, how that aligns with the vision. If it doesn't align with the vision of the CEO,
Cody, fantastic. I have many other questions here, but our time, we have reached our time. So my question is, how do people get to know more about Refined Technologies, about the team, about, you know, the company? What is the best way of connecting and learning more?
Yeah, www.refinedtechnologies.com. You can go there. We have an info page. I'm on LinkedIn. You can connect. If you have follow-up questions, shoot them to me. I'll try to get an answer. Or refer them back to you, Jose, because you teach me so much. I'm grateful for our friendship and how much I've learned. I'm grateful to be a part of this community where we're all trying to learn and grow together. Like, I think that there's a lot of opportunities for continued growth and learning. So thanks for the opportunity to be here today.
Cody, thank you so much for your industry leadership, for leading with purpose. Eternal purpose fuels excellence. Resonates so much with all of us in this community. So thank you for your generosity and sharing your journey with us.
Thanks, Jose. You have a great day. I'm grateful.
Ladies and gentlemen, Cody Nath, Chief Executive Officer for RTI, Refined Technologies, purpose-driven, eternal purpose fuels excellence, leadership that stands behind, you know, the purpose of an organization. It leads with that purpose clearly, with very disciplined approaches on accelerating innovation for value creation. If there is a message that we get from Cody and the organization, is the discipline and the engagement of the right people to amplify the behaviors that we want to have in the organization, the behaviors that shape our culture as our ultimate competitive advantage, a culture of excellence, a culture of innovation, a culture of value creation. And that's incredibly well exemplified by Cody Nath and the leadership team at RTI. So thank you so much, Cody, for sharing that leadership with us. Now, we're going to be taking a break here. Feel free during this break to go in there, connect with Cody directly on the post that we have for the conference, say thanks, ask any additional questions. I see still questions popping up here that I didn't have time to bring up. Thank you so much for your interaction, but you can go into LinkedIn under the post, under my name for BTOES Oil and Gas Live, and ask questions, connect with Cody directly for that as well. Now we're going to be taking this break, and when we come back, we're going to wrap up this conference with a great transformation leader. And I'm talking about Grigor Bembakov, who is the Senior Vice President of Business Transformation at Delek US, a major oil and gas company and Grigor is going to share with you the refinery of the future, the use specifically on the use of drone technology to disrupt, innovate, and transform. But he will also point out that there is no digital transformation without business transformation and without cultural transformation. And Grigor is one of those leaders who can talk about all aspects of transformation. So meet us at the top of the hour for an exciting, engaging conversation, one of the great cross-industry leaders of excellence, innovation, and transformation, certainly in the oil and gas industry and the energy industry overall. Thank you. We'll see you back soon.